The morning in London began like a gentle whisper, soft and slow, as if the city itself wanted to stay asleep a little longer. Fog drifted through the quiet street outside Keanu Reeves's townhouse, wrapping the old brick buildings in a pale silver mist. The world looked calm, too calm perhaps, but inside, Keanu wasn't thinking about anything except starting his day in peace. He stepped into the kitchen barefoot, the wooden floor cool beneath his feet. His home was simple, warm and tastefully organized, a refuge from the noise of fame and the chaos of the outside world. He liked it this way. No crowds, no cameras, no deadlines, just the comforting routine of silence, tea, and thought. He filled the kettle and placed it on the stove, listening to the quiet crackle of the flame. His eyes drifted to the window. Through the fog, he could see the faint glow of street lamps still flickering. A delivery truck rolled by slowly, its headlights slicing through the mist like cautious beams. Even London's usual morning rush seemed delayed today, subdued under the weight of the gray sky. Keanu wrapped his hands around a warm mug of tea and walked to the large window, facing the street. He took a sip, letting the warmth settle through him. Moments like this, peaceful, undisturbed, were precious. For a man constantly in the public eye, this quiet London house was his fortress. Yet something felt strange. It wasn't a loud feeling, not a dramatic alarm. More like a soft tug in his gut, a whisper telling him the air was different today. He glanced again through the window. A police car drove slowly down the street, but not with urgency, almost as if surveying. Odd, he thought, but not alarming. Not yet. He turned away from the window, trying to shake off the unease. He sat on the couch, flipping open a book, but his focus felt strangely distant. His thoughts wandered. Why did the street feel so observed? Why did the fog feel heavier? A sudden noise broke the quiet. Not loud, just a small metallic click, like someone stepping on gravel, or a boot brushing against the metal. Gate outside his door. Keanu frowned and leaned forward, listening. Silence. He waited. Another sound. Soft, deliberate footsteps moving toward his front door. Not one pair, two. Keanu set the book aside. His heartbeat didn't spike, but it sharpened. He walked toward the hallway, hearing the rustle of heavy clothing and the faint murmur of voices outside. Then, a firm, authoritative knock echoed through the house. Not casual, not neighborly. A police knock. Keanu froze for a moment, staring at the door. His instincts told him this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Something was happening and something big. The quiet London morning was over, and whatever waited on the other side of the door was about to turn Keanu Reeves's entire world upside down. The knock came again, louder, sharper, leaving no room for doubt. Keanu stood still for a heartbeat, the sound echoing through the hall like a warning. His London townhouse, usually a sanctuary of silence, suddenly felt too small, too exposed. The fog outside pressed against the windows as if holding its breath with him. Another knock. 3 hard hits. Official, commanding. Keanu exhaled slowly, grounding himself. He wasn't a stranger to unexpected visits, journalists, fans, even confused delivery drivers, but this was different. Whoever stood outside his door wasn't here for an autograph. He approached the door cautiously, every step calculated, quiet. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath him. When he reached the peephole, he hesitated before looking through it. Something inside him already sensed what he would find. Through the tiny circle of glass, 2 figures came into focus. 2 female police officers standing firm, their uniforms crisp and dark against the pale morning fog. Their expressions were serious, almost unreadable. One of them held a file tucked under her arm. The other's hand hovered near her utility belt, not aggressive but prepared. Behind them, a black unmarked car idled quietly, exhaust rising in slow gray waves. Keanu's stomach tightened. Whatever this was, it wasn't small. He unlocked the door, the metallic click sounding too loud in the silence. The moment he pulled it open, both officers straightened, their professional demeanor sharpening. "Mr. Reeves?" the taller officer asked, voice calm but authoritative. Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, can I help you?" The second officer stepped forward, producing identification with practiced precision. "Detective Sergeant Elena Ward, Metropolitan Police. This is Detective Inspector Mara Cole." Both badges glinted under the dim light. Keanu's eyes moved from their badges to their faces. Neither woman smiled. Neither eased the tension sitting thick in the air. "We need to speak with you," D.S. Ward said. "It's regarding an urgent international matter." Keanu's eyebrows knit together. "International." He forced a controlled breath. "There must be a misunderstanding." "We can explain everything," D.I. Cole added, "but not out here." Her eyes flicked toward the street. That small gesture alone made Keanu glance past them. Down the road, subtle shapes lingered. Officers pretending not to watch. A drone hovering low. Maybe even a hidden camera lens glinting through the fog-A surveillance net. They had planned this. Keanu stepped aside, allowing them into the house. The officers entered with slow, deliberate movements, scanning the environment out of habit. Their boots were silent on the polished wooden floor. As the door closed behind them, sealing the three of them inside, the atmosphere shifted. The house no longer felt like his own. The two officers stood straight, their composure unwavering, D.S. Ward opened the file she had been carrying, her eyes locking onto Keanu's. For a moment, Keanu couldn't speak. The words, "United States authorities," hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and unavoidable. His mind raced, sorting through possibilities, but nothing, absolutely nothing, in his life connected to any criminal case across the ocean. D.S. Ward held the open file firmly, her eyes steady and professional, though not hostile. D.I. Cole stood slightly behind her, arms crossed, watching Keanu with the kind of focus that suggested she was prepared for anything, questions, resistance, panic. They expected confusion. They anticipated shock. But they did not expect danger from him. Keanu finally took a slow breath. "I think you've made a mistake," he said, keeping his tone calm. "I haven't done anything that would involve the U.S. government." "We understand this is surprising," D.I. Cole replied. Her voice was controlled, precise. "However, the request we received includes specific evidence, allegedly linking you to a federal-level investigation." Keanu blinked. "Allegedly?" Cole hesitated, a tiny crack in her professional mask. Enough for Keanu to notice. "The documents state your involvement," she continued. "But whether the evidence is accurate isn't for us to determine. Our job is to follow procedure." D.S. Ward stepped forward and placed the file gently on the coffee table. "I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Mr. Reeves, the United States has issued a formal request for your immediate detainment and transfer to their jurisdiction." Keanu opened the file. Inside were forms, signatures, the seal of a U.S. federal agency. And then, photographs. Blurry images taken from angles meant to implicate. A dark warehouse, shadows, a figure with his exact build. A timestamp matching a night he was thousands of miles away. It was clearly tampered, to him, but convincing enough for bureaucrats following orders. "This is fake," Keanu said quietly, holding one of the photos. "You must see that." Ward and Cole exchanged a subtle glance, quick but telling. They did see something wrong, but protocol chained them. "Mr. Reeves," Ward said gently, "we are not accusing you ourselves. We are enforcing an international directive." Keanu ran a hand through his hair, frustration mixing with disbelief. "Why didn't anyone contact my legal team? Why didn't the U.S. question me directly?" D.I. Cole's jaw tightened. "Because—" She stopped herself, glancing at Ward, who gave a slight shake of her head, a silent warning. "Because someone wanted him taken quietly. Because someone didn't want him to prepare. Because this wasn't the normal process." Keanu could see the truth in their hesitation. "This isn't a standard extradition," he said. Ward exhaled. "No, it isn't." The file snapped shut. The moment felt like the closing of a door he could never reopen. D.S. Ward straightened her posture. "Mr. Reeves, at this time, I must inform you. You are being placed under arrest for the purpose of extradition." D.I. Mara Cole stepped forward with slow, measured steps, her cuffs glinting in the dim morning light. Keanu watched her hands, calm but alert. He wasn't the type to panic, but he knew this moment was crossing a line that once crossed would change everything. "Mr. Reeves," D.S. Ward said softly, "please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Her tone carried professionalism, but also something else, a trace of reluctance, as if even she knew this didn't feel right. Keanu didn't move immediately. He looked around his living room. the soft gray couch. The book on the table still open to the page he'd been reading, the warm mug of tea untouched on the windowsill. His sanctuary was becoming a crime scene. His peace was becoming an accusation. He lifted his eyes to Ward. "You truly believe this is necessary?" Ward swallowed. "It's not about belief. It's about orders." Cole stepped closer. "Please, Mr. Reeves, don't make this harder for yourself." Keanu let out a long exhale. Resistance wouldn't help. Not here, not now. The setup was already in motion. Fighting would only make him look guilty. Understanding that was the only power he had left. Slowly, he turned around. The room became unbearably quiet. Cole approached from behind, and he felt the cold metal of the cuffs brush against his wrists. It wasn't painful, but the symbolism, the humiliation, cut deeper than any physical restraint. The click of the cuffs locking echoed like a hammer inside his mind. For the first time, the situation felt real, not bureaucratic, not procedural, personal. "You're making a mistake," Keanu said quietly, not accusingly, just truthful. "We know," Cole whispered under her breath. So quietly that Ward didn't hear. So quietly it could have been imagined. Keanu's eyes narrowed, but before he could ask, she stepped back into her professional posture. Whatever she knew, she couldn't speak freely. Someone higher up was watching all of this. Ward gently held Keanu's arm. "We're escorting you to the transport vehicle now." But before they could move, a sudden burst of noise erupted outside, the muffled roar of engines, crackling radios and distant shouting. Cole's gaze flicked toward the window. She stepped closer and peeked through the curtains, her expression hardened. "We've got media," she muttered. "A lot of them." Keanu felt a cold, sinking sensation. They weren't here to quietly detain him. They wanted a spectacle. The front of his house was now crowded with flashing cameras, cops forming a perimeter and reporters pushing against barricades. Someone had leaked the arrest. Someone wanted the world to see him in. Handcuffs. Cole looked at Ward. "We need to move now," Ward nodded. "Mr. Reeves, stay close and do not speak to anyone outside." Keanu took one last look at his home, his safe corner of the world, before the officers guided him toward the door. The sound of cameras, shouting voices, and chaos flooded inside as the door opened. The moment the front door opened, chaos exploded into Keanu's quiet London morning. A blinding wall of camera flashes hit him like lightning. Reporters surged forward, microphones raised like weapons, shouting his name with frantic desperation. Keanu, why are you being arrested? Is it true the U.S. wants you for federal crimes? Are the allegations real? Look this way. Look this way!" Their voices smashed together, a relentless crashing wave. Keanu blinked against the flood of white light. The two female officers tightening their grip on him as they stepped onto the stone walkway. Police had formed a half-circle around the gate, holding back an ocean of journalists and curious neighbors who had gathered. The fog, once soft and peaceful, now amplified the chaos, swirling under the strobing camera lights like smoke from a fire. D.S. Ward leaned toward Keanu's ear. "Keep your head down. Don't respond to anyone." Keanu didn't need the reminder. He knew how one wrong sentence, one misinterpreted expression, could turn into 1,000 headlines. Still, he couldn't help but look around, feeling the weight of every eye on him. His London neighbors watched from their windows, shocked. Some filmed with their phones. Others exchanged whispers. A few looked concerned. Most looked confused. To them, Keanu Reeves, the quiet man, who walked dogs and tipped baristas, was suddenly the target of an international arrest. Cole moved to his other side, shielding him with her arm as a cameraman tried to push closer. "Back up!" she barked, her voice sharp and commanding. Two uniformed officers forced the media back, but the crowd surged again, like sharks catching scent of blood. The air filled with the snapping of shutters, the crackling of radios, and the throaty rumble of a helicopter circling low overhead. Keanu kept his composure. Years in the spotlight had taught him to stay calm under pressure. But this, being paraded through his own neighborhood in handcuffs, felt like a nightmare designed by someone who wanted him humiliated. He caught a glimpse of himself reflected in a car window. Wrists bound, shoulders tense, eyes shadowed by stress. A headline flashed through his mind. "Keanu Reeves arrested, International scandal unfolds. Ward guided him toward the black unmarked vehicle waiting at the curb. "Almost there," she said, but even her voice held a tremor. She didn't like the circus any more than he did. As they reached the vehicle, a reporter shouted louder than the rest. "Keanu, did the U.S. accuse you of working with a criminal organization?" The crowd erupted again. Cole spun. A round move, back another. "Voice, is this connected to that warehouse incident in New York warehouse, the fake photo?" Keanu's jaw tightened before he could process the implications. Ward opened the back door of the vehicle. "Mr. Reeves, get in." Keanu ducked inside. Cole followed, taking the seat beside him. Ward slammed the door and took her place in the front. The sleek black vehicle glided through the damp London streets, tires hissing softly on wet asphalt. Keanu Reeves sat rigidly, hands still cuffed in front of him for security purposes, his eyes scanning the passing cityscape. Streetlights smeared against the fog, turning familiar buildings into ghostly silhouettes. Even London, usually a comforting constant, now felt alien, as if the city itself was conspiring against him. Mara Cole sat opposite him, her posture impeccable, eyes alert. Every movement was precise, professional, a careful balance of authority and control. Keanu observed her quietly, noting the subtle tension in her jaw, the way her fingers drummed lightly on her knee. Ward drove ahead, maintaining a measured speed, her eyes flicking to mirrors and side streets, ensuring nothing and no one interfered. "This isn't normal procedure," Keanu said softly, his voice breaking the silence of the car. "Extraditions aren't carried out like this. Not without warning." Cole's eyes flicked to him, sharp and assessing. "You're right. Normally, a lawyer would be involved before any detainment outside your country. But the request we received is unusual." She hesitated, almost imperceptibly. "It's expedited." Keanu clenched his jaw. Expedited meant urgency. Expedited meant someone wanted him out of the country quickly, before he could prepare, before he could understand, before he could resist. Ward's voice came from the front. "We're approaching the secure entrance. Follow my instructions, and this will go smoothly." The car turned onto a narrow service road leading to a restricted part of Heathrow Airport. The fog thickened here, swirling around towering hangars and steel fences topped with barbed wire. Security cameras turned in unison as if the airport itself was alive, monitoring every motion. Keanu's mind raced. He thought of lawyers, international media, fans, colleagues, anyone who could intervene. But nothing mattered now. The operation was sealed, precise, unstoppable. The vehicle slowed, coming to a stop at a nondescript hangar door. A security team, dressed in black tactical gear, awaited. Ward and Cole stepped out first, scanning the perimeter. Keanu followed, the cuffs clinking softly, each step amplifying the surreal reality. He was leaving London under arrest, heading straight into the unknown of another country's legal system. A private jet sat ready on the tarmac beyond the hangar doors, its metal hull gleaming under the soft gray sky. The engines idled, producing a low hum that vibrated through the concrete. Keanu's eyes traced its sharp angles, the contrast of luxury and imprisonment striking him as bitterly ironic. Ward gestured toward the jet. "This is your transport. Step carefully." Keanu obeyed. Stepping lightly onto the ramp, Cole followed, keeping a close watch on him, her eyes flicking constantly to the surrounding security. The air smelled faintly of fuel and fog, heavy and charged with anticipation. The private jet hummed steadily as it climbed into the gray morning sky, leaving London and its fogged streets far below. Keanu Reeves sat rigidly in his seat, his wrists still bound in cuffs, staring out the small oval window at the fading skyline. The city that had been his sanctuary only hours ago was now a ghost beneath him, disappearing into clouds that mirrored the uncertainty pressing down on his mind. Mara Cole remained opposite him, alert and professional, yet her posture carried the subtle tension of someone trapped in a procedure that felt morally complex. D.S. Ward, seated in the cockpit alongside the pilot, spoke little, the occasional sharp glance toward the cabin confirming that every movement was being monitored. There would be no distractions. There would be no mistakes. Keanu's thoughts circled, relentless. Why me? Who wanted this? What charges could be so urgent that they would bypass every standard procedure? He ran through his past months, remembering every public appearance, every meeting, every flight. Nothing, nothing connected to the shadowed accusation awaiting him in the United States. The hum of the engines became a backdrop for his spiraling thoughts. Outside, the clouds stretched like a limitless ocean of gray. Inside, tension coiled tightly, palpable enough to touch. Keanu shifted slightly, careful not to draw attention, but the restraint of the cuffs reminded him constantly of the control the officers held over him. Cole's eyes occasionally flicked to him, assessing, calculating. She said nothing. Words weren't needed. Her expression hinted at an understanding that, while this was a mission of procedure, it carried an unspoken weight. Even the officers had to recognize the anomaly. They were moving a man, a public figure, a living symbol of calm and composure, into the jaws of an unknown legal battler. A sudden lurch of the plane caused Keanu to grasp the armrests, heart jumping. The pilot's voice crackled briefly over the intercom, confirming turbulence ahead. The cabin shuddered, lights flickering for a heartbeat. Keanu drew in a deep breath, centering himself. Years in the public, I had taught him how to handle chaos. But turbulence in the air and turbulence in life were entirely different. He tried to imagine the journey as a physical one, leaving the fog of London behind, crossing thousands of miles over the Atlantic and landing in New York, where uncertainty and authority waited like predators. He knew that the moment the plane touched down, he would no longer be in a familiar world. Every step would be scrutinized. Every reaction dissected. Cole finally spoke, her voice low and measured. Mr. Reeves, I know this feels surreal, but our priority is your safety. Don't make any sudden moves. Cooperation will keep this smooth. Keanu met her gaze briefly. There was no hostility in her eyes, only the weight of the role she had been forced to play. He nodded slightly. Words wouldn't help now, only awareness and patience. The jet descended slowly over the gray skyline of New York, its massive towers punctuating the clouds like jagged teeth. Keanu Reeves pressed his forehead against the cool window, watching the city stretch beneath him, towering skyscrapers, congested roads, and the restless hum of humanity, all familiar yet suddenly menacing. London had been a sanctuary. New York felt like a trap. The plane touched down with a soft rumble, tires kissing the tarmac with precision. Beyond the airport perimeter, the world had transformed into a theater of authority. FBI agents in dark suits, police vehicles with flashing red and blue lights, and barricades lined the runway. Reporters and camera crews crowded the edges, their lenses trained like predatory eyes. Keanu's pulse quickened. His sanctuary had evaporated, replaced by the full glare of public spectacle. The cabin door opened and a wave of cold air swept in. Keanu stiffened instinctively, acutely aware of the cuffs biting at his wrists. D.S. Ward and D.I. Mara Cole were already upright, professional and alert. Stay calm, Ward instructed, her voice low but firm. Follow our lead. Keanu nodded, swallowing the rising tension. Every step toward the ramp was magnified by the clicking of boots, the snapping of cameras, the hum of helicopters circling overhead. Each flash of light struck his face like a spotlight, exposing him to the world in a way he had never imagined. As he stepped onto the tarmac, the cold bit through his coat. The officers guided him toward waiting police vans. The crowd pressed forward, shouting questions, demanding answers, desperate for a soundbite that would define the story for the next 24 hours. Keanu, is this true? Did you commit the crime? Can you deny the charges? Why are you being extradited? Keanu's lips remained sealed. Words now were weapons against him, tools for someone else's narrative. Cole blocked a particularly aggressive reporter with her body, while Ward ushered him toward the van. Despite their control, Keanu felt exposed, vulnerable. Every inch of him laid bare to the judgment of strangers and the unblinking lens of cameras. The van doors slid open. Keanu took a breath, adjusting to the weight of reality. This wasn't a routine extradition. It was a performance orchestrated by forces unknown, each movement calculated to ensure maximum exposure, maximum pressure. The flashing lights reflected off his restrained wrists, illuminating the metallic bite of the cuffs. Every step toward the vehicle was a step deeper into the unknown. As he climbed in, Keanu stole one last glance at the city. New York's skyline stretched above him like a jagged crown. Impressive, relentless, intimidating. The plane had delivered him to a city of possibilities, yes, but also of danger. Behind every bureaucratic procedure, behind every agent and officer, there was a story he didn't yet know, and the one truth he could not escape. He was no longer in control. The van's tires crunched against the gravel as it entered the high-security perimeter of the American detention facility. Keanu Reeves sat in silence, wrists bound, mind racing with 1,000 questions. The fog of uncertainty that had started in London now seemed to thicken, heavier with each passing second. Outside the reinforced windows, walls of concrete, barbed wire, and steel gates loomed like a fortress designed to swallow hope whole. "Stay calm. Follow instructions," Mara Cole reminded him quietly, her voice steady, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her unease. Keanu nodded, though the reassurance did little to soothe the gnawing fear curling in his stomach. The van came to a halt and the rear doors swung open. Harsh fluorescent lights from the facility's exterior spilled into the vehicle, illuminating a row of uniformed officers ready to escort him inside. The smell of antiseptic and metal hit him immediately. Sterile, cold and unwelcoming. Keanu swallowed and stepped out, feeling the cuffs bite slightly at his wrists as Cole guided him forward. The interior of the processing area was stark and unforgiving. Concrete floors echoed with the shuffle of boots and the clatter of metal doors. A clerk motioned for Keanu to stand on a marked spot, while another officer prepared a camera. "Mugshot," the officer said curtly. Keanu's shoulders stiffened, the camera's flash blinding him for a moment. He had seen this scene countless times in films and television, but experiencing it personally was a surreal, degrading reality. Next came fingerprints, each finger pressed into the scanner, the cold plastic an uncomfortable reminder of the law's unyielding grasp. Every tap of the machine seemed louder than the last, reverberating like a drumbeat echoing in his mind. Cole stood nearby, silently observing, her hands folded, a barrier between him and the uncertainty surrounding him. Ward coordinated with the officers, speaking briefly in clipped, professional tones over a radio, ensuring every detail was logged. Every protocol followed, then came the confiscation of personal belongings. Keanu handed over his wallet, phone, watch, and any small items that could be considered contraband. Each item disappeared into a metal tray, leaving him more exposed, more vulnerable. The realization hit him. He had crossed an invisible line. London, his sanctuary, was gone. New York, the city of ambition and chaos, was now a cage. The final step was assignment, a number, a cell, a reality stripped of identity. Keanu received a uniform, simple and utilitarian, the fabric rough against his skin. He changed quickly, feeling the weight of anonymity pressed down. From Keanu Reeves, the international actor, to 42781NA, a string of numbers that held no humanity, no history, no fame, as he was escorted down a narrow corridor lined with locked cells. He caught glimpses of other inmates, their eyes, wary and hardened, studied him with curiosity, suspicion or indifference. The cell was cold, the concrete walls gray and unyielding. Keanu Reeves sat on the narrow metal bed, wrists sore from the journey, mind restless with questions. He had been processed, cuffed, photographed, and stripped of his identity, reduced to a number in a foreign jail. Yet even in the stillness he could feel the weight of something larger, an unseen hand that had orchestrated his arrest with precision and secrecy. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, running his fingers through his hair. The flickering fluorescent light above cast harsh shadows across the room. Outside, distant voices echoed down the corridors. The mundane routines of a prison, blending with the ominous tension of the unknown. Keanu had been trained to read subtle cues, to notice patterns in chaos. And already, his instincts were screaming that this was no ordinary case. A soft, almost imperceptible sound reached his ears. A tapping. Deliberate. Precise. He froze, listening. The other inmates were too far away to notice, their murmurs drowned by the distant clang of a metal gate. Keanu leaned closer to the cell bars, straining to hear, and realized the noise wasn't coming from the prison itself. It was internal. Subtle communication, maybe even a warning. Someone had left him a clue. His mind raced back to the file in London, the blurry photographs. The timestamps, the vague evidence, meant to frame him. Everything had been constructed carefully, deliberately. Someone had orchestrated this with foresight, anticipating every move he might make, every reaction he might have. The police, the media circus, the expedited flight, all part of a meticulous plan. And whoever it was had influence stretching across continents. Keanu closed his eyes briefly, drawing in a controlled breath. Panic would not help. Fear would not help. He needed clarity. He needed to understand the players, the motives, the endgame. One thought burned fiercely in his mind. This is bigger than me. Much bigger. A shadow passed near the corridor, and he caught a glimpse of movement, a guard, or perhaps someone more subtle, leaving a small envelope just beyond the reach of his cell bars. Keanu's heart quickened. He inched closer, fingers brushing the cold metal. The envelope was light, simple, unmarked. He tore it open carefully, revealing a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note: "Trust no one." The setup runs deep. Look beyond the surface, no signature. No indication of who had left it. But the message was clear. He was not alone, and someone, somewhere, was aware of the injustice being done. Sitting back on the bed, Keanu absorbed the implications. The arrest, the media storm, the flight across the Atlantic, all part of a narrative someone had written. He had been forced into a role he hadn't chosen, in a story designed to discredit him, manipulate him, and perhaps even control him, but he wasn't powerless. His mind, trained for focus, patience, and precision, immediately began to strategize.